Hey everyone, it's Crystal from Casual Confections, and today our bake-along is more along the lines of candy making. So if you're ready to head down to Hogsmeade, we're going to whip up some Butterbeer Fudge, which is a Casual Confections favorite. Alright everybody, this is one where you're really going to want to do your prep work first. It goes a long way to making this easy, instead of trying to keep up with it as it happens. So let's walk through what we should do to prep. In our nice sizable pot, you want to make sure you have enough room in there for things to boil up as they cook. We have 3/4 cups of butter, 3/4 cups of evaporated milk, 1 jar of marshmallow cream, not fluff, marshmallow cream, and 2.5 cups of granulated sugar. So that is all what's sitting in our pot right now. I do not have the pot running. I have the thermometer set up and the pot ready to go. So that stuff is sitting there ready for us to start. The other section to get ready is your flavors. In our orange corner, we have a 1/2 cup of white chocolate chips, and I've already added 3/4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And in our green corner, we have 1.5 cups of butterscotch chips, which I have already added 1 teaspoon of rum extract and 1 teaspoon of butter extract. So these flavors are sitting and gathering right now, and they are ready to go. And the reason I have them ready is as soon as our fudge base is ready to go, we need to divide it between these two and stir, stir, stir before it sets. So if you have everything ready to go, this becomes a little easier. All right, so we have our fudge base prepped on the stove, and we've got our flavors prepped here on the table. I have my tray ready to go. So I'm using a 9x9. You can use an 8x8. Spray the bottom of the pan with nonstick spray because that helps to hold your parchment paper down. So put a line of parchment paper in and make sure you have the sides overhanging. It'll make it a lot easier to get it out later. And then spray the top of the parchment paper too, just so it's extra loose. You don't want the parchment paper sticking to the fudge. All right, and then I have both a mixer ready to go, hand mixer, and also a rubber spatula for each because I want to be ready to stir, 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 stir as soon as we're ready to go. All right, so it looks like we're good for prep. Let's get baking. Well, right now that we have our ingredients prepared and we're ready to go, we are setting the stove to a medium heat. We are making sure our pot is on a stovetop that matches our size. So I have a large pot on a large burner, and the medium heat's going to start getting stuff kind of gooey, and you're just going to want to stir this constantly stir it as it's going to melt and come together. What we're looking for is everything to kind of become this fun, creamy color. You might have to move your thermometer around. You can leave your thermometer out when you're doing the initial mix and then add it later. I like to just have it in so it's one fewer step I have to take. So it gets a little goopy and we let it sit for a minute. So we'll come back. We'll see how it changes phases as it melts. There are 2 ways to do this recipe. The original recipe actually has you take this to a boil and then set a timer for 7 minutes and letting it run from then and taking it off after 7 minutes. I've gotten pretty inconsistent results with doing it that way, so what I do is I take it to a boil, and I also make sure I have my candy thermometer in, which I've got my little probe going, and I want to get it up to the softball stage. Some will say it starts at 234 degrees Fahrenheit. I take it up to 236 degrees Fahrenheit, and where you take it within the softball range will depend on how soft or hard you prefer your fudge. So I'm going to get this guy going, and we'll be back in a bit to check on the consistency throughout its bake. So as you can see, it's already getting a little more goopy. The marshmallow cream is still standing out a bit. Everything else is starting to congeal together and melt together. And one thing to note is if you're using your candy thermometer is you don't want it touching the bottom of the pan. You want it above the bottom of the pan, but still set inside what you're cooking. If it touches the bottom of the pan, you're gonna get a much higher reading than what the liquid actually is. So mine keeps slipping. I just have to keep adjusting it because it's not locked in place correctly. So I'm gonna tilt that a little more. It'll get in place a little better once I'm done having the solid parts kicking around. When it's a little more liquid and boiling, we should be good to go. So I'm currently at 99 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm taking it up to 236 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll check back and check the consistency in a few minutes. This is going to be the longest part of your cook, by the way. Everything else is going to go very quick. Getting the temperature up over 200 isn't going to take long. Getting it to that magic number for softball sage, that's what's going to take the longest. It's going to seem like forever, but guess what? It'll totally pay off in the end. So as you can see while I'm talking, some of the clumps are going away. They're melting as the temperature goes up. Still got some butter. That's melting. Got the marshmallow cream. Mushroom cream, there's something different. Don't put mushroom cream in your fudge. That'd be an experiment to try. We want to use marshmallow cream. All right, now I'm going to take this off for now, and through the magic of video, we'll be back to check on consistency in a bit. Checking back, we're not boiling yet, but we are smoothed out. We are currently at 152 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, we are getting closer to a boil, very close. And you may start to see some darker colored bits come up, and that's fine. That's usually meaning that some of the condensed milk, the evaporated milk, is cooking a bit faster. So you can either keep mixing it, it'll go back into the fold. You can lower your temperature a little bit if too much of it's coming up, but typically that is not a problem. We are currently at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. We are still stirring. One thing to keep in mind when making fudge is that it spits, and the parts that it spits burn. So do your best to keep your hands away from this hot concoction. Make sure you are wearing an apron or some kind of other covering on your body. If you can wear sleeves without overheating, I highly recommend it. Just be safe because this stuff spits, and be careful with your stirring. This becomes a very hot candy base. We are currently at 217 degrees Fahrenheit, and we are starting to boil. All right, again, we're taking this up to 236 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, we're at 236 degrees Fahrenheit, and we got to move fast. So we are going to quickly add 1 cup of this hot stuff to our white chocolate mixture, and the rest goes into our butterscotch mixture. Alright. Do be careful, like I said, it is very, very hot, so I'm going to scrape out, tilt that up a bit, scrape out what I've got in my pan before it sets. And we got to work quick because it's going to start setting pretty quickly. Scrape out what I've got down here. As you can see, it's already starting to move a little slow. So, what do I have to help myself out because I don't have 4 hands? The hand mixer. So I get you guys set up right here. Sorry for the clunkiness. That's what happens when you're a single camera operator. All right. And we're gonna mix this up on slow real quick. And we're trying to get the chips melted. And I'm just gonna, with the other hand, mix my butterscotch chips up a little bit so there's some movement so that it doesn't have time to set. And then I'm gonna switch hands so I stop hitting the camera. All right, so as you can see, we're beating the chips so that they're melted. You don't want to beat it on too high. You don't want to get some air in the fudge. You want to make sure your chips are melted because that'll give you that smooth layer on the top of the fudge. All right, so that's our white chocolate layer. It's okay, that's going to start setting up a little bit in the blender, in the bowl. And then we're going to hand mix. You can hand mix both of these. I just found the electric hand mixer to be a bigger help in speed because that white chocolate mixture, there's so little of it that it sets really quickly. There's so much of the fudge base in the butterscotch mixture, it's going to stay hotter longer. So you're going to have time to come in and do this by hand. Now, you're going to be combining flavors anyway, so if you want to use your hand mixer and come in to do the butterscotch layer afterwards, you can do that too. Adjust that a little bit. But this one I just tend to do by hand. It's so hot, the chips melt pretty quickly. It doesn't take a lot of effort. So if you're able to, go ahead and use your hand to mix it. Use an electric mixer if you want to save time. If it helps you, if you have trouble holding onto the spatula, if you have trouble mixing for this long, if you've got wrist pain. Candy making should be fun, not painful. So use the right tools for the job. Don't try and be like, oh, I had to hand mix it. No, use the tools for the job. If you need to use an electric mixer, use an electric mixer. All right, so we want to make sure, again, all our chips are melted. All right, this is looking pretty good, pretty smooth. You can see some of the sides are starting to set up already. All right, so what we're gonna do next is be careful because the bowls are hot. If you are using a metal bowl, please be super careful because it's gonna be super, super hot and you can burn yourself. You will burn yourself. All right. Now, take your butterscotch layer and we are going to scrape this guy directly into our pan. Get the sides, get the bottom. Get as much of that goodness out as you can. After mixing by hand so much, you may end up needing to put the bowl down for a sec, and that is okay. Do not use your hand to scrape that clean. You will get burned, so please be safe. So I'm going to use the bowl to do that. Okay, so not touching it at all, but I am going to use this rubber spatula to smooth it around. Okay, so just by looking at the consistency, while we're smoothing it around, I think we've got a pretty good, we hit that mark with the temperature. I think this is going to be a pretty good setup. Our fudge will be pretty tasty. So we want to try and make an even layer, as even as you can. You can swirl it around a bit. Now with the white chocolate layer, you have two options. There's a trick in the original recipe where you can use wax paper to help it set up while the butterscotch layer sets up. And when I say set up, I mean it's starting to solidify. And if both layers start to solidify and then you add the white chocolate onto the butterscotch, it'll give you two distinct but connected layers of fudge. What I like to do is add them directly on top of each other while they're still hot. And so I'm kind of gonna drizzle it across here. And the reason I like to do this is I like to make it look like a freshly poured frothy beer. And so I will actually end up having my white chocolate melt into the butterscotch a little bit. There we go. And I just like to swirl it up. I enjoy how these flavors blend together. I enjoy how it looks visually when the colors blend together. So I'm going to pull some of that color from the edge there and I'm going to swirl it in. But you can play with this however you'd like. If you'd prefer to have separate layers, keep them separate. I'm going to try and get more coverage on the sides with that white chocolate layer. And I don't want to mix it in completely though. I do still want there to be some distinction. I want the bottom to be mostly butterscotch so that you still get that flavor of the butterscotch through most of it and then the white chocolate through some of it. So let's take some of that to the corner. You can see some of the white chocolate's already starting to set up. All right, guys. Whoop. So make that look as frothy as you want. Get that edge. Okay, make sure this is level as you can get it, just like anything else. So it'll help it cool off evenly, and it'll also provide you for even cutting for serving. All right. All right, everybody, so how did you do? I only ended up with 3 tiny, really quick burns. You can't always help it. It happens. Hopefully you escaped unscathed. All right, so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna take our tray of hot molten, pour it on your enemy's fudge, and we're gonna set it aside. It's 9 o'clock at night here, so I'm leaving mine overnight over on a cooling rack, which is over on a counter where nobody is going to touch it. If you're going to leave yours overnight, go ahead, just put it somewhere safe. You can also pop it in the fridge. It'll cool off faster, but you still have to give it plenty of time. That is a thick batch of molten goodness. You do not want anyone to get burned, and you want it to set up firm. If you cut into it too early, it's just going to collapse. It's going to fall over the place. You're not going to be able to eat it. Or you'll pour it over something. It'll be like liquid fudge. You want this fudge to set. This is a really good fudge to just bite into a block. So put it aside and dream about it. Through the magic of video, we'll come back tomorrow and it'll be a snap. And we'll cut into it. We'll check out our consistency. We'll see how it came out. And we'll talk about if we needed to change our temperature or if there's something else that might have gone wrong with this batch or if we pulled it off. See you in a flash. All right, guys, so our fudge is set. So let's take a look. You want to carefully lift up on those edges to get it loose. And it should come out as one piece. We're going to move it over to a cutting board. All right. Once on our cutting board, we're going to flip this guy over and peel it off. Nice and easy. I'm going to flip it over again. That should be one nice piece of fudge, pretty solid. It still might be a little soft, so you don't want to put too many finger indents. And then just go ahead and cut it up. I'm using a non-serrated knife. I like to use the bigger ones because it just makes it a little easier to cut across. When you're cutting your fudge, if you find it sticking a bit much, you can always clean off some of the parts that get on the side for a cleaner cut. Alright, so we're going to do one more across. And you can cut these into any size you'd like, depends on how you're going to serve it. If you're going to be serving it at a party or something, you might want to do smaller bits so people can grab and go. If you're selling, well, I sell them, but if you're selling or if you're giving them as gifts, you might want to leave them in larger chunks. So let's take a look. We got our nice little swirl of the butterscotch and white chocolate. We have our butterscotch layer. We have our white chocolate layer. These corners look awesome. And we have a nice consistency. So let's check a middle piece as well. We have our nice butterscotch layer, our white chocolate layer, and our nice swirls. A little commentary from the peanut gallery. All right, this fudge looked awesome, you guys. All right, so how much fudge did this batch get us? Based on our weighing, this is just about 2 3/4 pounds of fudge. Not too shabby, you guys. So, tell me in the comments, how'd your fudge turn out? What do you think of the taste? What would you do differently next time? What would you do the same? So, fudge lovers, not fudge lovers, give it a go. I have had people tell me they normally don't eat fudge, but could not believe how these guys tasted. So give Butterbeer Fudge a go. Let me know how it turned out in the comment section, and thanks for baking along with Casual Confections. Happy baking!